People today, how did you set your current prices? Did you use any of these? Competition, okay. Competition?
I evaluate how much I think the client can pay.
Okay.
And intersect that with how much I need to work.
Okay.
That's pretty much what I did exactly. We both do the same thing.
Well, I know there's a lot of contractors who figure out what they think the client can afford, and they go for the moon with people they think are well-to-do. When I lived in New Jersey, and I had a giant stone house on a couple acres, manicured, and everybody that came to fix anything would pull up in their driveway, get on their phone, and order the round-the-world cruise that they were going to take on what they thought they were going to make from me. In the meantime, I'm mowing my own lawn, tending my own garden, and doing a lot of things myself. And if they didn't price it like, what's the material, what's the labor, what's a normal profit, they never got the work. Because they were, I had prices the high bid was 3 times the low bid, and sometimes the low bid was an incredibly experienced contractor. So it's very interesting. On the radio show, we were talking about myths and mistakes. I should have brought that sheet with me of pricing. And the first myth is that you have to price just like your competitors or below. But we'll see. When's the last time you raised prices? Recently, okay. October.
January 1.
January.
Yeah, I did raise my prices.
2 years ago.
2 years ago? Never? Okay. And how many years is that roughly?
Well, in another business I'm in, 2009.
Okay. So I get all sorts of things. My all-time record is 15 years. And then he finally had to raise prices and his customers started to flee. Right? And it's the lobster in the pot. You start with the cold water and inch it up a little bit, they don't notice. But if you wait more than 2 years, they're going to really notice it. And even if it's just cost of living, just the inflation rate, it's very interesting. So for any of you who ever have things on sale or have coupons or specials, my question always is, are you over discounting? And restaurants in particular, they have all sorts of coupons. People go crazy with offers because they think that drives traffic, and in certain situations it certainly does drive traffic. But very often you devalue the product that you sell by doing that. And I only work with small businesses, so you don't have the deep pockets unless it's a hobby. And hopefully none of the people in the room are just work because they like to. I'd like to think that people like what they do, but they're not working just for fun. Right? And it would be extremely unusual if anybody in the room was the low-cost producer of the thing that they did. Right? So trying to compete on price in general is not a great strategy. In fact, if somebody seriously wants to consider that, they should just write me a check to their entire net worth, and I'll be better off, and you can write that to the solution, and just save all the, this isn't working, and I'm going out of my mind, and I'm losing my shirt strategy. So pricing you're going to see is just one factor in a whole range of things. And we're going to go through 5 case studies of actual work with some of my clients about what their situation was. But what I'm trying to do all the time with pricing is drive customer behavior into patterns that are profitable for my clients. To me, this is the goal. I end up doing pricing for probably 80% of the clients I work with. It's never the thing we start with. It's always just a piece of the solution that we need more of, whatever. And how are we going to do that? So let's just talk a little bit about how pricing is used to manipulate your behavior today, right? From big companies. Car companies, what do? Well, they group things into trim levels, and then they have groups of options on top of that, and it's very rare you can just pick the things you want. So what they're trying to do is get you to spend more and to buy stuff that has little value to you, but the only way you can get the things you want is to pay a lot more money to pay, even though they discounted the package over the single option price, you're paying a lot more. I went to look at I just sent 3 weeks ago the last tuition payments on my 2 sons. And so the fireworks could be seen from the entire county. And I went to look at an Audi A4. So it started in like 30s. I said, maybe I could go for a car in the 30s. And I wanted certain safety features. I'm kind of a crazed person on safety features. I've been interested in automobile safety since I wrote my honors thesis in college on it. And to get the 3 most fundamental elements of safety required me to spend $50,000 for this car. So what they're trying to do is get you to buy things that you don't want to pay for. It's not to say that they're not useful. The minute you get these things, they become useful, and you can't imagine living without them. But when you get there, so fast food, right? Dollar menus, all sorts of stuff like that. What are they trying to do? Well, they're trying to get you in, drive traffic, and bring your friends, because not everybody buys on the menu. And it's been very successful for McDonald's, and hence all the competitors are offering all these kind of value things. And but the dollar menu, all the franchisees went completely crazy when they started this years ago, and they could see that it was driving all this traffic. Because even though they have it, a lot of the sales, most of the sales, are not off that menu. Very interesting. So they're trying to drive traffic. So movie theaters, right? 2 elements of pricing. You're trying to drive people into times of the day or days of the week, right? So movie theaters are not that busy in the afternoon. You know, they're lucky to get a handful of people. So they discount the tickets. So they can do that because if you did a full cost allocation to how much the ticket should be, they wouldn't be able to discount that much. But they're looking at it, I could either not get anybody at the higher price, or I could get somebody, 3 times as many people at the lower price. And even though I'm not getting that many people, all I'm doing is paying the people to take the tickets, and I'm going to sell some food, right? So my marginal cost of being open in the afternoon is very low, because I'm already heating the place, everything's there. I do have to pay a little bit to the movie company for playing the thing, right? But I'm getting enough revenue that is greater than my cost of being open, and therefore I'm contributing to my overhead, and I'm contributing ultimately to my profit. So they discount the tickets to drive you by time of day. And restaurants often will offer things in slow days, like Monday's a slow day for pizza, and they need to be open because some people want to get pizza, but even on a minimal staff, they need somebody to do the dough, somebody to whatever, right? They have way too much capacity. So they could have really great specials on Monday to get some people in, and again, the strategy is you're picking up some extra customers, and you're contributing to that overhead. So you wouldn't be able, if that's all you could do 7 days, you couldn't stay in business. Very, interesting. Large retailers. So when I think of large retailers, I think of people like Walmart and whatever, always low prices, right? They are trying, in the classic economies of scale, sell a lot more units, but make less on each one of them, right? And you make it up in volume. It's the real sell a lot and make it up in volume. I have clients that lose money on stuff and they try to make it up in volume. They just don't know it until I analyze everything. So that's a classic you know, a strategy is to make less per unit but sell more units. Certain department stores, one of my favorite is a national chain that they have constant offers, coupons, bring this in, it's whatever, it's Tuesday, my big toe is red, so you can have whatever off. And it's been going on for so many years now, I wouldn't go in the store without a coupon because if you wait 20 minutes, there'll be a coupon. Right? And it devalues the whole brand. And they're really over discounting, but they're doing it to create urgency. Right? They're doing it to get somebody to come in now and not put off buying, and then the weather improves, so you need that piece of coat that you were trying to sell, whatever. They're trying to drive urgency. Excuse me, I forgot to turn my phone on. Very good at remembering. Sorry about that. So they're trying to drive urgency, and airlines is my favorite case. So I used to be involved in pricing for airlines back when they were regulated. I know this is in ancient times before the invention of the wheel, and I get my walker out because they don't price that way anymore. So what they do now is on-demand pricing. It's based on how they're doing. So they start out 3 months early with a low price that you can lock in now. And then they have computer models where they figured out what's the typical curve of demand for this flight at this time of day for this destination. And so it gets kind of a base thing to get some people in the plane, and then they just start raising the price. And as long as they're on the curve to have a full plane, they keep going. If they get a little off, they might have a Tuesday special and try to drive the volume a little bit. That's why Tuesdays typically is the best day to buy the airline ticket. And they want to get back up to that curve. And then as the plane really starts to fill up, they start really aggressively raising the price. Some might say price gouge. And God forbid you need to change it at the last day. So what they're trying to do is get the most money on a plane full of people. And the reason this is important to them is if they sold everything at the price for vacationers, they couldn't literally stay in business. So those people that go early and get those great fares, the whole plane was full of those, they'd be out of business, every single one. So they need to get the most money, and the only way they can do that is to get those business flyers that have to go the last minute and pay through the nose, and that's why they have all these, we won't go loyalty programs, but that's another thing that I don't participate in because I know that they actually work. They get you to spend way more money than you ever would for something that's almost worthless. It's like, what a beautiful scam. But we won't do loyalty programs tonight. It's they have to do this to make any money, and there was a long time they didn't make money, and they were hit by fuel and a lot of things, and they struggled, and a lot of guys went out of business, and then they either all got together or all came to the conclusion at the same minute that they have to cut capacity, have a lot less competition, raise the prices across the board, or they're all going to go out of business, and that's exactly what happened. And I don't know about you, but almost every time I fly, there are no seats at all on the plane unsold. And I don't like it, but that's the way it goes. What I really hate about the airlines is the stratification, the classes. I'm always one of the ones paying the most for my seat, but I get to board with the escaped criminals that they haven't found yet and bungee to the thing. I'm in like the fifth, first you have all the royalty, then you have the minor nobility, then you have the rich fat people that have all the money to pay, and then you get down to the
Yeah, American has
escape.
9 boarding groups now.
9 boarding groups. Well, the caste
Like,
system.
really? Yeah.
See, I don't do well with the caste system. My ancestors fought to overthrow the English monarchy with Cromwell. Came here in 1649, settled in Rehoboth. He couldn't vote because he was a Baptist instead of a Puritan. He said, screw this. I don't know what he actually said. He negotiated the land charter with the Indians and formed Swansea, Massachusetts. And then 100 years later, some of the people got together and were one of the co-founders of the Sons of Liberty. So I come from this long line of bomb throwers. If I wanted to be kowtow to monarchy and all this privilege, some guy runs across the field in the year 1100 and his, offspring get to own all the means of production for the next 800 years. And people still believe in this, but it's not something that I'm key on. So I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way, manipulate people's behavior with pricing. So the first thing to do, and you're going to see where I'm going with this, is to decide what it is you're trying to accomplish with pricing. So before you can set pricing, you really have to have a solid business strategy, a marketing strategy, and figure out what are you trying to get people to do. So let's go through 5 case studies. So these are all clients of mine. The first one is a doggy daycare. So they had 3 locations, and they had a doggy taxi. They go pick up your dog and bring them there and return them. And they had a dog walking service, so they would go to your house during the day and walk your dog 1 or 2 times, depending on how late you worked. And they had a little small kind of boutique dog accessories. Oh, and they did grooming. But the main thing that we were focused on was the daycare. And the problem that they had is that they had a lot of unused capacity, a lot of space to handle more dogs on a lot of days of the week and over the course of the month. And I modeled their business, and we discovered that with if you could drive up the capacity utilization, you could make more money than you'd have to have your own print service to carry the money out. I mean, it was extremely responsive to capacity. If you could drive capacity, you could literally the profits could go up 500 and 700%, right? Which is not the case for a lot of businesses, right? But they had these buildings, they had to have certain people there at the desk to take the dogs in, they had to have, people to watch the dogs and all this, and that, when you went maybe from 30 dogs to 60 dogs, you needed another person or whatever, there was some step function, but fundamentally adding 1 person to all this overhead and all these people was not a lot of money at X dollars per hour, right? So that was the challenge that we were doing. So they had you could just show up with your dog and buy a day, and that was the per day price. Then they had a punch card. You could buy 10 visits, you could use any time, didn't expire, at a reduced price. And then you could get a monthly thing where you could come every day if you want. And if you're working, a lot of people would come all weekdays. And what we wanted to do was to incentivize frequency and penalize the occasional user. And we wanted to get that capacity utilization up. So what we did is we raised the just show up price. We raised I'm giving you a discount, but you can still show up whenever you want. You can use it over the course of 2 years. So it's really, why am I discounting something like that? I'm not getting any money anytime soon. And I'm not filling up the place. And then we took the monthly and made it to, you can use 7 days a week, all you want, any hours, maybe boarding too. And we lowered that price. And we made that super attractive. So that, if you used it 15 days a month, you were saving pretty good money over, the base rate. So we lowered the one that, you didn't have to be inhibited because you were spending extra money to bring your dog, and we made it more expensive for the others. And it drove the utilization from like 40 to 70% because they built this whole, they attracted customers from other daycares, Dolby daycares, who had a higher price on that monthly, and they needed that monthly. So they built up this thing, and now I'm getting all this money, and if they don't use it, they don't use it. It expires at the end of that month, right? They're just paying monthly, and it's like revolutionized the world for them. But the key is that they could serve more customers at almost no extra cost, right? Unlike a retail store, they have to sell goods that cost money. So you can't just have all you can consume. Right? You can't go and all you can eat at that same price. That wouldn't work at a restaurant. So it drove revenue, and profit was incredible. And so once we figured out what behavior we wanted, we used pricing to incentivize that, and it was amazing.
So that really helped them take from their competitors too, really.
Oh yeah,
Really
absolutely. And they probably still haven't figured it out.
Yep.
The bowling alley, very interesting, right? How do you drive business in a bowling alley? Well, you can just, you can give discount coupons, whatever. You can lower the price of your basic thing that you sell. And but there's two things about that. One is when they tried that, it didn't drive traffic. They had some specials in the summer, like you could bowl the whole summer for $99. It might have even been for a family. You should have taking one lane, right? I mean, that's like ridiculously cheap. You could come in on rainy days, whatever you feel like. They sold like nothing, 30 of them. You're giving it away. So here's my object lesson in using price to drive the sales. You have to understand the sensitivity. Economists call it the price elasticity of demand, but it's the sensitivity that your customers will respond to a price change. So if you increase prices 10% and you lose less than 10% of your customers, you'll have more money at the end of the day. If you cut prices 10% and you get 13% more customers, or more than 10%, you'll have more money in the coffers at the end of the day. Now, you have to bear in mind what your cost structure looks like, but when it's very sensitive, and it can be as sensitive just with a cut, but it also can be sensitive where everybody's shocked and doesn't want to buy it anymore. It goes both directions, and it can be different for each. That's something very important to understand. So I modeled this bowling alley. I do this thing called the Apollo Profit Acceleration Technique, and I can talk about it later, but I build a model of the business, and I play what-if games, and figure out what are the key drivers that are going to make this company more money. And I've been doing this a long time, and it's still fascinating to me that I can't just go into a place, listen for an hour or two, and tell you what it is. I have to do the model, and there's always something that comes out of nowhere. Like most of the things I've already thought about in working on it, but there's always a twist. It's really amazing. You think at this point, I could skip it all and just tell you what you have to do, but that's not true. So what we discovered is that pricing was, inelastic. You couldn't get anybody more in by discounting, and it was very hard just to drive business. And so what we figured out that we needed to do was to drive the average spend, because they have a restaurant, and I got them to upgrade the food. So I was, competitive or better, with some fresh stuff, not as good as your stuff. And they also had, people would pay for timed bowling, so you could bowl as many games as you wanted. For an hour was X, whatever, $30. So we changed. So if you're bowling, you bought an hour. Does that encourage you or discourage you from stopping bowling, going and getting food, eating the food, and coming back and finish? It's a disincentive, right? Oh, I'm using up my bowling time. I can't finish my game, right? So they're priced exactly to discourage the behavior that we wanted, which was to get them to linger, since we had capacity on, non-league things, and take all the time you want with your lane. I mean, that would hurt them 3 or 4 days a year, but school vacation means people go bowling with their kids, whatever. So there's a little time when they actually are at capacity from just people off the street, but that was the exception. So I got them to change to pricing per game.
So I don't know that. Is that a departure from how typically it's done in bowling? Is this a revolution?
It's some of each.
Okay.
I'm used to pricing by the game, but there's a lot of them that do time pricing. And another thing is the conventional wisdom in bowling circles. I do a lot of research before I blow up my customers. Is that you should cut the price of bowling because it doesn't cost you anything. You just turn the machine on, right? So it's a free good, zero cost. Once you have the thing, you have the people there, whatever. Except that it's depreciating the brand. Once you bowl at a cheaper rate, you don't want to pay a higher rate. So I like Tropicana orange juice with Florida orange juice, which now comes in the clear plastic things instead of in the carton. It used to be all that, but then they couldn't get enough oranges to meet the demand, so they brought them in from all over the world. They still squeeze them in Florida, and it said squeeze, they picked some clever wording that implied they were Florida oranges, but they were only partly Florida oranges. That used to drive me a little nuts. And the taste would vary depending on what oranges they put in. So I like the more expensive one, and it's around $4.69, $4.39, and so now it's $2.99. So I've been paying for something, and I was, thought it was a little much, but I really like that juice. In fact, I probably would consume that juice at any reasonable price. But after I was able to buy it for $2.99, it was only worth $2.99 from then on in. So somebody must have complained, because BJ stopped selling that orange juice about 8 weeks later, and I bet you it was all the, everybody else that said, I'm not going to sell your juice if you're going to sell it, let them sell it for $2.99 because it's killing my business, and they stopped carrying it. Well, now forever and ever and ever, when I pay more than $2.99, I really feel ripped off. And then I discovered that Walmart has it for the low threes. Walmart. It's like, who buys food at Walmart? I don't buy food at Walmart. Orange juice is around $3.29 now. Still, the supermarkets are $4 something. And occasionally, now I've seen $2.50. They've really gotten crazy. So they undercut Walmart. But I don't like to follow coupons around. I'm not a coupon kind of guy. And so it's devalued the product. So when you start your main product, in this case bowling, you start making it so it's really cheap, that becomes what it's worth to people. And that's not a good thing for a lot of small companies So I got them to charge by game, and interestingly, when we changed, we tried to do it in such a way that it was the same cost of bowling for a typical, 3 people, 2 games, whatever. I analyzed all that to 17 decimal places, and we did the best that we could not to raise the price of bowling. But now, people didn't mind pausing their game and going off and getting food and eating it, some on whatever, and we were able to drive up the spend per visit, per person, which was a really big deal. It also simplified the pricing, because all the question was always, well, how many games can I get for an hour? And it depends on how fast you bowl and how many people you have on the lane, and get your calculator out. Yes, ma'am.
So how often does the bowling alley raise their price? I mean, I see the logic in keeping the price, not devaluing it either, but then...
Well, my general recommendation, when you don't have a highly elastic demand, when your customers are not super price sensitive, is to raise your prices around every 2 years. Unless you have fast moving costs that are driving up, and you have to do it every year because. And same thing because of the lobster in the pot. It's really hard to make up for not raising the prices. So we'll see. From all the analysis that I did of previous decreases, his demand was inelastic as when he was raising prices. He only lost a small number of people. And of course, the big driver there is all the lead bowlers. I still believe there are a lot of lead bowlers. But I pointed out to him that was not going to be a good long-term strategy, because very few people probably in the room, and very few people that are 20-something can afford to commit to 20 weeks of bowling on a Tuesday night or whenever it is. Like, I don't know what I'm doing on a Tuesday night. I would never give a block away of time, and that by itself is killing. It's also it's extremely interesting to recognize that bowling was considered like a very kind of, I don't know, ordinary guy sport in the 60s and the 70s, and it's actually now the biggest single group of bowlers has a family income over 100,000.
So I have 2 questions. Do you measure this in terms of time? Is there a critical time where you say, where there's an inflection point where you say this is working and we're getting affirmative feedback that this strategy works, or maybe conversely, maybe we need to go back? And my second question is, do you differentiate among the customer base? Because aren't there diehard bowlers who have one attitude about, I'm a chess player. If I can play chess at a discount, I'm going to play it, whether it's expensive or whether it's inexpensive. So if I'm a bowler and have it,
the pricing that we changed was for non-lead bowlers. I also got him to raise the prices for the lead bowlers separately, but they still are just paying a lead price. They pay whatever games. They're not really paying by game, or really, certainly they're not playing by time.
So do you, is the Pareto principle where pricing is concerned, are 20% of the user base paying 80% of the revenue?
Well, the lead bowlers pay way less per game if you converted it to games than the people off the street. They're paying, it's like unbelievably cheap. So, you're not getting 80% of the revenue. They're 80% of the bowlers or whatever they are. They're a big percentage of the bowlers, but they're a much smaller percentage of the dollars.
And when do you know when it's working or not working?
So, of course I analyze past what happened in the past, which is hard because a lot of people don't have really good data. Some companies have pretty good data. I recommended that they try this in the summer when, there are fair number of casual bowlers that come in because kids are off from school or whatever, and try it in a non-peak time. But you know, the one thing is with a lot of pricing, like with bowling, you can try it out, and if it's not working, you can reverse it. So the length of time that you look, I would look at the results week by week, but in order for that to be valuable, you have to do an analysis of the seasonal behavior week by week, or you have to look at it month by month, and you need to know the seasonal behavior, and if a holiday falls. So you really have to have good data, and you have to analyze it, because just because it went up this month versus last, it could have had more weekend days, it could have had, you know, one more or one less holiday. So you really got to look at your data to see what's happening. But I like to look at it weekly and compare to the same week the prior year and adjust for, you know, a holiday falling in a different week, and looking at it, you know, really paying attention to what's going on, looking at it, you know, I mean, if all of a sudden your traffic's falling off and it's a period it should be rising, like in a lot of businesses in Newport, and it's probably not a good strategy. And right, but as you're going to see as we proceed through these cases, there's different conditions for each thing. But the key thing here was that they couldn't drive people to bowl more, and they couldn't, so it didn't do them any good to discount, and they needed to get a higher spend, right? So that's a different kind of condition. I also got them to open a virtual reality center, and to get a new thing and become an entertainment center. The thing about bowling is the bowling centers that are just doing the same thing and they've been doing for 50 years, they're all going out of business. And the guys that are bringing in other things for younger people to do, and I don't mean kids necessarily, because that's actually not the target demographic. You want some of the 20-somethings to 35 and 40, which an amazing number of bowlers are in that age group. It's absolutely fascinating, because my mental picture before I walked in there was a different thing than is the reality. And bowling is in a very slow decline. And the only reason it's in a decline is that when a bowling center closes, bowlers do not want to travel to the next town to bowl. So when the bowling center closes, they just stop bowling, most of them. And so the whole decline can be attributed to closing of bowling alleys rather than like across the board declining. And those bowling centers that became entertainment centers with, you know, above average food or at least average food and multiple things going on, become successful and are good money makers and have growing businesses and are attracting, you know, the 20 and 30 something who want a good experience. And in fact, I've suggested that he make a pretty good increase in prices for the leagues, because on certain nights of the week, every lane is in use. And I want to take back some of those lanes and do something else with it. So I'm going to raise the price and let the chips fall and replace it with something that is attracting a different demographic. So easy when it's not my money, right?
So I think everybody would be interested in the web storefront.
All right, we'll go to that.
This crew.
So these guys make really cool apparel. They design it themselves. It's made offshore, and they sell it on their website, and they sell it to wholesalers that sell it to small boutique kind of places. And what's interesting about this stuff, does anybody watch NCIS and know the way Abby dresses? You know, the forensic scientist who's always sorting it out. She has kind of like a little bit of a goth look and tattoos and dog collars and rhinestone things, and she's a very attractive woman personally, I think. But some of their clothing has found its way onto the program that she's worn. So that's the kind of really different kind of stuff. And there's a whole market for that, believe me. It's actually kind of cool. My daughter, I brought the wholesale catalog home one and showed it to her, and she was like, okay, I want these 12 things. So, you never know. So
are they drop shipping to retailers on demand, or are
they have a warehouse, they do their own fulfillment.
Okay.
They get their orders from the internet and those kind of orders, individual orders, and they get it out the door the same day. So I did my profit acceleration technique on them, and I really couldn't get them to make any money. Their profit had been declining to almost zero when they called me, and increasing the volume did nothing for them. Because it's not a classic, I have a car plant and I wanted to work 3 shifts and make use of all the equipment, so my cost per unit goes down with greater volume. They still have to get the stuff. Their design cost is fixed, but they can't really reorder. There's a very long lead time with all this stuff. So the volume...
And their manufacturers are selling directly against them, probably.
Yeah, don't get me started on that. I'm an economist, and I paid a lot of attention to how all this has compressed the wage cycle across the entire United States, and I would be happy to discuss that. And I don't blame the Chinese or any of those folks for outsmarting us. I blame our political system for not responding in ways that could have made it a lot better for us. So, what do they need to do? They needed to increase prices. But prices are, in that kind of apparel, and I imagine a lot of apparel, are very price sensitive. Really hard to increase the prices. So I said, what you got to do is you got to increase the perceived value of the brand. And my suggestion was they go and get some celebrity endorsements and get more buzz. They had good buzz, but to get some celebrities that put their stamp on it, even if you have to pay them, in order to raise the value in consumers' eyes and then slowly raise the prices and improve the margins, because they couldn't get anywhere where they were going. And it was like really cutthroat and really hard to pull off something like that, and also increase their marketing, so they're increasing their awareness and they're increasing the people finding them. So that was really tricky, because the wholesalers did not like their prices being increased when, even though they were improving the perceived brand value, the retailers that were buying their stuff to resell right from the wholesalers, they wanted to get all that extra premium. So they lost some people that wouldn't sell their stuff. Right? So they shifted their mix a little bit to more retail and a little less wholesale, but they were making a little more money, enough more that it helped them, and they got to continue to develop their brand, right? Branding is a whole nother topic, but once you can get to, why do people want a brand? Well, you want a brand because people are willing to pay more money for that good, right? And the sales cycle is shorter, but mostly because they're willing to pay more for it, because you set a standard for quality or whatever it is, or design and stuff like that, and that's a whole nother topic. but they needed to develop their brand in order to get them where they wanted to be, and there were no other like tricks we could pull to get them where they wanted to be. And they wanted to drop shoes. That was, it turns out, their most profitable item. But they hated it because it was very hard to get the quality control, and they were physically taking up a lot of space in the warehouse to have all these styles and all these sizes, right? A lot more sizes for shoes than t-shirts or whatever, right? And they wanted to drop it, but it was their biggest margin thing, even after the fact that they had a discount, you know, odd sizes later on and stuff like that. It was still.
So did they get a celebrity?
I'm sorry?
Did they get a celebrity?
They did. They did. And they keep working that angle.
Which is sort of a B2C strategy, and for a B2B marketer, it's sort of surprising, right? To use a celebrity, right? I mean, because it's not really registering with the buyer. I mean, the final.
Well, they did have a fair amount of business through their website.
Mm-hmm.
So by increasing the advertising, they were able to get people that might have gone to stores to find them because of the somewhat uniqueness of the product. And it was, you know, very well done, well made, which usually doesn't. They had men's and women's. Usually doesn't apply to women's clothes. My wife compares what she buys and what I buy, and it's like generally no comparison in the quality. It's like terrible. It's very tricky.
Would we know the celebrity?
No, I don't want to give you any clues. That would be not fair. This is one of my favorite all-time customers. So this guy, this company, builds custom designed furniture. So 8 of the 100 richest people in the world are customers of him. And some big designer would pencil out a chair, you know, should look like this on a napkin, meet with this guy and say, yeah, I need, you know, 10 of these and this finish. And he had like over 400 kinds of wood for veneering that aren't available today because he was collecting it his whole life. And he has the highest level of craftsmen in the world. There's like a whole guild international thing, and he had some of the highest level people. And you could buy, you know, go down to the armory and you find some really cool chair and bring it back and say, I want 7 more of these for my dining room set, just like this, and they could duplicate it. Really cool. It was losing money. Like, how can you lose money with your customers being some of the richest people in the world, and everybody else that had major money? I mean, who has furniture designed by a famous designer and made for you? I mean, presumably nobody in this room. So what was wrong? Well, what was fundamentally wrong was that he didn't charge enough. And he would do estimates in his head for what this 7 chairs was going to be. And like, I'm very good at a few things. And if I estimated in Bryan hours for somebody else to do that, they would probably need more, you know, the things that I'm great at would need more time than that. Well, he was really great at all this stuff, and he would do his estimates in his hours. And you go to these craftsmen, and they say, well, he's on serious hallucinogenic drugs. It can't possibly be done. And so I had this long battle with him about estimating. And at one point, I said, I've gone to your shop people with all the open orders that you have, and I've asked them where they are with that and what's the estimated time to complete on every order. And I came back and they were more than double what he thought. He could cite off the top of his head for every single order what the estimated time to complete was, except that it was completely different. So I said, your people think it's this. He told me I'm full of S. And, you know, I tracked it and I went back with the numbers and he still told me I was full of S. So the other thing he would do is he would take deposits and he would use the money. You get a 50% deposit, and he'd use the money for current clients. So he got like running behind because he's losing money on these things because he's not charging enough. So why are all his customers so, not letting him charge enough? And it's because he was very poor at delivering on time. And so the people that couldn't take it anymore left. And he was only left with the price-conscious ones because he's doing this world-class work at a comparatively cheap price. So now he has this whole set of customers that don't want to pay him what it's going to take. So first, I had to get him to do estimating by the book, and I did all these templates. Secondly, I got him to stop deciding what was going to be built and get a professional scheduler do the schedule. Third, I got him to leave some capacity in the works because he'd have some, one of his famous designers would rush in and say, I have to have this on a rush job. He would drop everybody else would be late, and he would do the work for this guy because it was really important, and would screw everybody else, which, sometimes was that guy, right, with a normal rush order. So, and he was charging the same price for rush orders as anything else. So, basically, first, we had to fix the on-time delivery. The other thing is, he'd work out what this thing was supposed to be like. Somewhere along the line, the guy'd say, change from, fruitwood to oxtail or whatever, and it wouldn't get to the guys doing it some of the time, and it would get made wrong, and he has to eat it and do it again, which of course makes it late, and it's like phenomenally expensive to do this, right? Because he didn't have a clear spec agreed to with the client, and he didn't have a change control process by which everything was done in writing, and that anytime there was a change, it flowed down to the people that actually had to make the stuff, right? So we have all of these things. So first we had to fix know how to estimate. Then we had to fix the delivery problem so that when he said he was going to get it, he delivered it. And then we had to charge extra for rush orders to discourage people from disrupting the production schedule. And then we started raising prices aligned with cost, and we let the chips fall. But because he had reestablished himself to be able to deliver on time, he was able to get back some of those people that went away. So it was a very complicated problem, and it was magnified by I've been in this business all this time, and I'm way smarter than you, and believe me, I'm charging enough. And even with everybody in the company disagreeing with him, and even though I analyzed all these orders, and I could prove to him that he was losing money, he wouldn't accept it. It took him a long time. It cost him a lot of money, and he had to borrow money on his house and put it into the company. And
how long does it take you to analyze a situation in general? A year?
Well, I certainly don't think there's any kind of average. Sometimes I can, do things in a week, and sometimes there's so many different issues that I have to untangle, and there's systems, sometimes the orders are on paper in a file. Right? There's no computer system, there's no whatever. So the better the data that you have, and the better that you've measured things. Like when I work with service customers, they send a truck to go do something, like, electrician, whatever. They do a lot of different things. So there's a lot of different things that an electrician could do, and you have to figure out, by class of thing, what does it usually take, how much you're charging, what's it really cost you to send that truck? And I don't care what you paid for the truck. I want to know if you got a new truck tomorrow, if your standard practice was to sell it after 3 years with 90,000 miles, what's that depreciation look like? What are all the costs? And that's what you need to be fitting back into, your pricing strategy Not that you have these 2 beat up vans and you have no money to replace them, because you got to price by replacement cost, and which is how the modeling differs from accounting, because you're buying an asset, you're depreciating, you're doing all these things. Over any length of time, it'll be exactly the same or very close, right? But if you just look at the book. So I have to untangle everything, and depending on the data, the complexity, the number of product lines, like this guy, God, this went on for months while I was uncovering all of this and figuring out what to do about it and coming up with very practical, simple ways that they could do the scheduling, and not change their mind. I did this, we started the scheduling, and he kept changing the schedule. And so I decided to come up with this report card for him. And if he was supposed to start a new order in that week, and he had some person work 1 hour on it, he got credit for starting it. If he was supposed to finish it, if he finished it, he got credit. And if he was supposed to work on it, all he had to do was work on 1 hour, and he got like a 43. Like, that was like the lowest bar I could imagine. It's like, it doesn't really mean that you're delivering anything on time, but at least you're working on the things you said you were going to work on. And so that was really hard. But I love the guy, and I love this thing. And the coolest thing, and I'm a classical music guy, and he had Chopin wanted to play concerts throughout Europe, and there were no public concert halls. They didn't exist in the 1830s and 40s. So he went to play out, a very famous manufacturer of pianos, and he ordered 15 pianos, and he sent them ahead so he could go and concertize for the public. And that was completely new. And this guy has one of those pianos. It's like, oh my God. And he knew the guy that owned the Pleyel factory, which was still in existence, had since closed. And he could get parts and stored the whole thing, and then he could do the case, right? Because he had all the veneers. If you had a Louis XV commode made for the King of France in 1743 and you were missing a piece of this, he could get that veneer, usually. He could certainly make it look like the original. It was amazing. Pizza chain. Oh, I love this guy. So, this company really has more than 30 employees, but they have had 30 employees in the home office, and everything else is franchised, a small chain. So, pizza is one of those cutthroat businesses, and price. There's a whole segment of people that buy on price. And the pizza actually is very good. I'm thinking, oh my God, this is going to be horrible. I'm very fussy. I lived in an Italian neighborhood for 17 years. They had a few world-class pizzerias. Oh my God, what's this going to be? They actually had pizza that they entered in the California Gourmet Pizza Contest, and they beat out Wolfgang Puck and some other people. Wow. It really was good. I was like, because I'm really no good at, oh, this is marvelous, and it's like, I want to throw up. I can't do it. What you see is what you get with me. So they send out, most pizza places, they send out on these offers, right? There's a coupon in the paper, they put people on email lists, whatever, and they discount. And the problem is that they have to discount a lot of stuff. And because they had a seriously better product than some of the name brand commercial pizzas, which those companies will readily admit is not good pizza. It's fascinating. They never claim to have the best pizza. They claim to deliver it hot and fresh in 30 minutes. They delivered it. They claim all sorts. Nobody ever claims they have the best pizza. They have the most cheese. They never said it was the best pizza. It's very interesting. The brand promise. So the optimal pricing strategy, if you ask an economist, what is the best strategy, is you want to capture the consumer surplus, right? I'm selling a dress and it's worth $11 for you. I want to sell it to you for $10.97, and it's worth $10 to you. I want to tell it, for $9.80 to you. So you're still paying what you're willing to pay for it, but I'm capturing most of what it is you're willing to pay. That's the optimum strategy. Everybody has a different price. And of course you want to move pizza. So what we did is we had a big technology project, and we captured all sorts of information in a database about what people bought and who they were. Like to have pizza delivered, right? You got to give us your phone number and your address and your name, so we know a lot already, right? So we sent this data out to different services, and we filled in 140 fields on average out of 180. They can get everything, your underwear size, how many times you have whatever. I mean, it's ridiculous what and this is not shady, what the family income was, the name of the family dog. We didn't get that, but we did know what kind of cars they drove, and we knew the age of their children, and scary, right? So, and we knew their buying habits, so if they were vegetarian, we didn't send them a, meat lovers offer, we sent them something relevant to them, and we created this personalized offer scheme. So, if you liked your offers in an email, and you normally read your email at 11 o'clock, we would send your offers to you at 10:58, so it would be at the top of your email list. If we gave you an offer for $1 and you didn't take it consistently, we would give you one for $2. If you took that, mostly you would get $2 offers and not the $3 offers. The next one, $2 not enough. At $3 she buys, she gets $3 offers. The offers are individualized, they're non-transferable and can only be used once. And you have to have a loyalty number so that we know it's you. So we could effectively price individually for every customer based on everything we knew about them. And how this would play out is, let's say the family income was $34,000, and taking your family out for pizza was a really big deal. At that income level, we would give them 50% off on Mondays when the place was slow, and capture what they were willing to pay on a time when we were willing to do it. So, really, really cool. For economists, this is like the ultimate thing of extracting the most people are willing to pay, giving them what moves them, and a price that they're willing to pay without feeling ripped off, and not being able to see what anybody else is offering. It's very interesting. So you might consider that unethical, but it certainly is using pricing into patterns that drive behaviors that you want, which is to capture the most you can from each customer, but have a whole array of people you can serve. Now, it took a lot of money to do, so that's not something my typical customers would do. This was a referral. I do referrals of somewhat bigger companies that ask nice and they want something that I'm interested in doing. I thrive by challenge, if you haven't noticed that.
But that's pretty much where we're headed in terms of marketing in general.
It's very much, certainly the big guys are headed, and it puts the small companies that I work with at a huge disadvantage, because it's really hard to gather all that information. They're lucky to have an email list with a legitimate opt-in, right? You can't just be sending out emails anymore. It's very, very difficult for small companies to play in that space, but there's a lot of other things that you certainly can do in the pricing space. But You need to understand the sensitivity for your product or service. You need to understand your cost structure. You need to understand the best actions you can take as a company to drive your profitability. It sounds like stupid, but that's really true. That's what I'm doing with my Apollo Profit Acceleration technique, is I'm figuring out what are the actions that are going to make a difference, and it's very different for different companies. And it depends on a lot of things. It's not just as easy as, oh, I have a lot of fixed costs, whatever, whatever. There's a lot of interesting stuff. And finally, then, how prices fit into driving the behaviors that you want. Let's say you need more customers with a family income of $100,000 or more. So you can collect some certain demographics, and you could send these out of a small company. You could send it out and get some of this information back. And then you could track how many people you got as customers for, you know, that have that income level. And then you could see whether you succeeded in getting the $100,000 customers, but you still didn't spend, or you failed in getting the $100,000 customers, but the idea was right. Right? So you can take some action to get more of the 100,000 if you just didn't get enough, and you don't want to wait for it to get to the bottom line and your income's increasing. You take some action, but you need to have some transparency into what's happening. I mean, it probably worked out if all of a sudden your profit's going up, right? But if it didn't go up, you don't know what to do. So I have to put measurement in place, and it's different for every single situation, to be able to have some instrumentation into what's happening, so you can figure out why it's not working and do something different. And pricing's got to fit into your business strategy and your marketing strategy. If you're trying to sell a premium product and you're offering a Mercedes for $20,000, people are going to be suspicious that, it has flood damage or some other thing, or it's not really a Mercedes. It looks like a Mercedes. Right? You don't expect a Mercedes to be $20,000. So your pricing, if you have like unique merchandise or some angle that's great, you should be charging more for that. If you're charging less for that, it undercuts the perception of what you're doing. Something somebody was saying in the room beforehand. So pricing is a very complicated topic, and you kind of have to know a lot to wade in. I mean, hopefully tonight I've given you some things to think about. Right? Maybe too many things, your head's spinning and you need a beer. But any questions? Was this?
You can help with startups.
Sure. I've done a lot of work with startups. Not so much as, I did a lot of that with Ricey because, it was volunteer. But I'm very happy to work with startups. I work any size company. And I try to work within people's budgets and do things in the minimum way that gets them to where they want to be with the dollars they have. Sometimes there's startups and they need a business plan. I do a lot of business plans. When I have a startup, I give a proposal in 2 steps. One is, let's work up like a basic thing and see whether this is viable. Like I did a cafe in December. They wanted to start up like a very healthy food, breakfast and lunch place. And when we worked the numbers, it was improbable that they could make any money given the location they needed to be in and how much money it was. And they dropped it, which is exactly why I do it in 2 steps. I don't say, okay, give me $4,000 for this, but let's take a first step, see if it passes, the sniff test, and then work out to levels of detail. And because I've had companies in the past, I can go look at, like, what does it cost for garbage collection? They almost fainted. Like, for restaurants, it's very expensive to have these dumpsters, picked up all the time. And you know, they were like blown away at all the costs that I put in, and I was just looking at what other people are actually spending, so I'm not like pulling it out of the air. You know, maybe it doesn't exactly fit their situation, and we would need to dive down for the final business plan, but for the smell test, and there was just too much going on. They were very disappointed. But it's like, they're disappointed, and you paid me a little bit of money, then, and the other thing is you got to have a business plan if you need financing. I help companies try to do that. I had a very tricky situation where an established company kind of slipped on a banana peel just as they needed to refinance a loan, and they were in an industry that was not considered that great, and I wrote this business plan that punched the holes into why the industry is bad, and made a solid case for how they're going to get out of their situation, and they were able to get the loan. That was probably my best business plan ever. That was this year.
I have a question. What influence do you feel online?
These businesses that you've outlined tonight seem mostly to be offline, with the exception of the customized pizza email and things like that. Do you see downward pressure as a result of competition online? I know we run Google AdWords campaigns for companies large and small. We look at acquisition cost as a percentage of the lead versus the close, and what the order margin is, and we can calculate with a Google calculus. It seems like that would affect or impact offline pricing, or just if you whatever business you're in, what you're able to transact online versus.
So you're absolutely right. I mean, virtually all my clients need to be found by their customers, whether it's B2B or whether it's B2C. And so managing your online presence and your branding and all of that it has to be done well. And your cost of acquisition is very important in all these calculations. So you're absolutely right to get on that. And I often figure out what that cost of acquisition is, and they're often very disappointed, and and how high it is. Right?
Yeah, right.
It can be expensive, can be very competitive in different industries. So I think there's a lot of downward pressure, but I think it comes back to the business strategy. You have to come up with some angle that's different. It could be different because you are a physical store and you're hoping to get people in a short drivable distance, right? Or it could be different because you have a much better service level. You have to come with a point of differentiation. So I come back to the business strategy. Everybody thinks they have a business strategy. Some people have a business strategy that I can't poke holes in. A lot of people don't have one. You want to have a business strategy that's going to keep you in business. Often for small companies, that means differentiating yourself. And it can be unique products. There's got to be some twist, and then you got to sell that twist and get enough of a premium over the commodity guys to keep yourself in business, because you're not going to be the lowest cost producer. Like, unless you have the patents on something, and even if you have the patents, it doesn't help you. The Chinese are stealing it. We won't go there. You have to come up with your points of differentiation. Like working with a lawyer, what's the point of differentiation? I do this whole messaging and branding evaluation for clients when I do like a competitive positioning. I look at what they say about themselves as how they're positioning themselves. And I would say that 30% of the companies that I analyze that are competitors of whoever I'm working with don't give any reason to buy from them. They're just there. I'm here. Write me checks. Seriously. They don't say I'm better, faster, cheaper, smarter, better looking, more fit, faster service, anything. They're just there. So I had this law firm and he wants to get more business. I was, well, how are you going to differentiate yourself? And I did this competitive analysis, and I came to the conclusion that he needs to be the plain. He thought that one of his strengths was being able to talk plainly about the law in terms that normal people could understand and not leave leads. And I looked at all the competitors for his specialty, and nobody talked about that. And I recommended that he's the plain speaking guy. And yes, he has the experience and whatever, and that's all there, but he's leading on a differentiating factor. Because the other guys, some of which I'm sure are also plain speaking, but if you had an experience and you don't understand the clue of what the guy said, in a prior life, and this, you meet somebody else now, and this guy says, I'm going to be able to talk to you, that's a differentiating factor.
What kind of law?
Oh, I don't want to say. No fair. My clients would not like it if I identified them for the most part. I do have testimonials, I have great references and all that, and especially when I'm telling them all the stuff that's going on, that would be cool.
How about if we jump into a little bit of a flash round? So if there's like 3 to 5 things that someone could, who came tonight, what do you should be thinking about or overlooking, or how does some takeaways?
I don't know, what are you guys thinking about what you need to know?
Well, I would think branding, right, is an important piece, right? Differentiation. Then
Very key.
I think one of the things I take away tonight is perceived value. People, you have to have a certain price to be respectable. They don't think they're getting anything valuable if you just give it away. That's important.
It's very important, and interesting about perceived value is you don't have to have actual value. You just need to have perceived value.
Exactly.
You can have real value, but it's not perceived, it does you no good.
Psychology, it's a prevailing conceptual reality.
I-
What reality prevails
Exactly.
in their mind is what it is.
I don't suggest anybody try to differentiate them on something that they can't back up and actually be different about. Because that's, somebody will figure this out. But
Yeah, number 2 would be that with competitive differentiation. Like, selling clothing online is friggin' brutal, right? But they were unique enough.
Yes.
So they were able to do it because they were unique. So I do SEO. I won't go near an e-commerce client unless they're extremely unique, because otherwise Amazon's going to kill you. So it's got to be unique. That's another big thing. I think that's a big takeaway. Uniqueness.
So I have to put a plug in for Mark, because he's been doing my SEO for 6 or 7 months, and I've worked very hard to get my site on management consultants and business consultants is super competitive, and I reported last time, or 2 months ago, that he had me on the first page for 40 phrases, but we went back and did some more homework, and 114 phrases. You cannot search for anything that I do and not find me on the first page of Google in Rhode Island.
excellent. Good job, Mark.
And I've spent a fortune trying to accomplish that in the past.
Raise your prices, Mark. Nope. I
raise
didn't
the
say that.
prices. I'm
I
going
didn't say that.
Perceived value, differentiation, absolutely. I mean, I say business strategy and marketing strategy, with my understanding of what that is. With your business strategy is how you're going to bring value to customers that's going to last. And your marketing strategy is how you effectively communicate that and get those customers in the door. And you have to have those down. If you don't have those down, that can often be a key driver. You need more customers, but just as many times more customers doesn't get you anywhere. You need more customers at a different price. You need more customers in a time slot where you have capacity. You need more, you have to slice and dice it and drive behavior. That's really the key. And you have to figure out what behavior you want.
The other thing, though, is I used to run a doggy daycare with my ex. She left me for a Doberman Pinscher. But anyway, it's too funny. But he was more loyal. Anyway, I'm just being funny. So, thank you. But seriously, having run a doggy daycare, I went through those issues because we had a huge building, which was huge heating overhead. and a lot of expense, and we were grooming, and we made the money in the grooming and the retail, but the daycare really didn't work out that well, because we had so much square footage to heat, and that was brilliant, that really hit home with me, but what I learned from you tonight is really that give the deals to the right people. The right people to give the deal to is the person that's going to come for 30 days straight, not the one offer. So no extended pricing deals for, that was great. I mean, give the money to the people you want.
It's very hard for me to summarize into the takeaways the way Suzanne would like me to, from my perspective, because I'm thinking at a very low level of detail. This client was this, and I could do 25 more slides of what we discovered and what were the driving factors and how we accomplished that. And so it's very hard for me to sift it down to a few principles, because I'm very specific in my recommendation. I want to be sure that the conditions are the right conditions before I make a recommendation and blow up their business. That would not be good.
But to Mark's point, I think you need to look at the lifetime value of your customer.
Yep.
And say on the first sale, if you're break even, but you've won the customer, it's in your database, you've got his name, the dog's coming back. It's a dog-eat-dog business. I know doggy daycare. It's rough. It's rough. But a lot of our clients tend to want to understand that, especially when they're getting started on an AdWords campaign. What are they looking at up front versus as their quality score comes down, the bid rate changes, and what's the long term? If you only have one product to sell and there's no aftermarket, that's a different proposition, right? Than a guy like Mark is got a lot of repeat
One of the
business.
key things is, do you have repeat business in your business?
Right.
If you don't have repeat business, it's a totally different strategy. If you're trying to, get people to, come back and repeat buying for you, the key is to drive that over and over. It's less important to make, more money on it, but if it's something somebody buys once every 10 years, it's a completely different strategy. And you got to consider those other things. And as we were talking about before, the acquisition cost of a customer is very high. My cost of acquisition is very high as a consultant, right? But I have one thing that's going for me, which is when I go in to talk to people and I do a proposal for them, I have almost 100% close rate. So I'm willing to do a lot of analysis for free. I do free assessments for companies and come back with a course of action to figure out what to do. And I have almost 100% close rate. If I didn't, I'd be losing my shirt, because I could be spending a free day just to get something that if I got a 30% close rate, I'd be losing my shirt. Right? So you got to understand, I know exactly my cost of customer acquisition along all the different channels.
That isn't bad necessarily.
Right, exactly. Right, it isn't bad. But if you're giving away a lot of free time, and I spend at least 20% of my time in business development, writing my blog. It takes typically a couple hours a week, writing these articles for the Rhode Island Small Business Journal. I try to do something that's meaningful. This is not like little crap things that I'm doing. I'm trying to really get in the head of my customer and say, what do they want to know about? Like I just finished a series on the customer journey. What are the phases of that? How much information do you need to provide in the early stages and whatever? When do you need to focus on them to close that business? Well, how are the information to be layered? What's the buying cycle? Like a car, the buying cycle can be 6 months from the time people start looking for a car to the time they buy one. So you have to cater to that. A house could be a year. They have to decide with the realtor and all these things. So you got to look at the length of time that a sale is in gestation. Like a restaurant can be from 10 minutes to a couple of weeks in general. It's not a long cycle. Oh, I want to try something new. What are the new things? And you decide and you go to that thing, right? And so you have to consider that with this whole layering of information and how much time you can afford and
Well, I think everyone's brains are saturated with pricing, but Bryan, you're happy to stick around, right? If
happy
people
to stick
have
around.
specific questions related to their business. And thanks everybody so much for coming out.
I've got business cards on the table, a little flyer on the different things that I do, and 2 issues of the Rhode Island Small Business Journal if you want to see some of the things I write about. And please join me on my blog. There's a lot of useful stuff. And you can go back hundreds of articles by just scrolling through, or you go to the search box on a topic and you get a whole set of things, and then you can just look at them.
Nice. Okay, so what does everybody think about May 24th is the Thursday leading into Memorial Day versus the week prior? People mostly going to be around? I'll send out an email. Anybody have thoughts on that? Okay. All right, so just trying to figure out what would be good because John Picozzi is going to give an amazing talk as he always does. He's super funny and very knowledgeable, and it's going to be a lot of focus on tools to make your web world work better. And if you're interested in the 80s dance party, let me know. We have tickets, and thanks for coming. Good to see everybody. Take care. Thank you, Bryan.
Thank you.